Okay, I got a warning. There we go.
All right, so my name is Will Scheibel. I'm a freshman at Clemson University. I'm an accounting major, and I plan on getting my master's and then eventually my CPA license and then going to the public accounting field. Purpose of this interview is just to learn sort of more about it, see if there's any bigger problems or things I might not be too interested in doing and things of that nature. And today I'm being joined by Ms. Amanda Ranson. I just wanted to thank her for her time and insight coming out today. This lovely Zoom call we have here and taking the time to be with me on this Saturday morning.
Sure, my pleasure.
So could you start by telling me like a bit about yourself, like your occupation, responsibilities, your name, company, all that stuff?
Okay. My name's Amanda Ranson. I graduated from the University of South Carolina with a degree in finance a number of years ago. And then I went to Clemson and got my master's in accounting because I realized I wanted to be a CPA and I needed more accounting hours. I am currently self-employed. Mm-hmm. I consider myself a roving controller. I'm self-employed and I work for several clients and I do controller type functions for them, small businesses. Mm-hmm. And I also do a little bookkeeping because that comes with it. And I really am not a tax accountant, but I do know enough about taxes to sort of know when to ask a question or point somebody in the right direction or look something up. So, but I do not really do tax prep other than for myself.
Yeah, that's to be expected. All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started with some questions. Sure. So you touched on this, you said you went to the University of South Carolina and got your master's at Clemson.
Yeah.
So what sort of like training and requirements are obviously required, like, your CPA, things of that nature?
Well, when I was going through, you had to have a master's. No, you did not have to have a master's degree. That happened right after I started sitting for the exam. But I did sit for the exam, passed it. I worked in public accounting for one of the big 7, I think it was back then. It was Ernst & Winnie for about a little less than a year. It really wasn't my scene. It was very competitive. It just didn't work for my personality at the time. I was a pretty timid person. So then I left there and I went to a regional accounting firm and I really got a lot of good experience out of that. I did audits, which back then was required to get your certification. I don't think audit experience is required.
I think it's just a field of public accounting.
Yeah, but it was back then. So I got a lot of audit experience, which was very good experience because you get to see a lot of different sort of types of companies that are out there, nonprofits, rental, small businesses, big businesses, all different sizes. You get to meet a lot of people and kind of really see what's going on out there in accounting.
That's why I want to do that. I think I want to do audit.
Yeah. So I did that for that regional firm, but I was also because it was a smaller firm, tax season, everybody does taxes. Oh, yeah. So that was a good experience. That was not the case with the big firms. In the big firms, you choose audit or you choose tax, or maybe there's something else.
Flexibility.
Yeah. So I got a lot of exposure to tax, so that was good. Mm-hmm. And back then, I also, because it was a small company or small firm, I was the IT person.
Oh yeah.
So that was a great experience too, because I learned an awful lot. And then I left there. I'll just give you a brief history because I've done a lot of things. So I left there and went and worked for a client at the time. It was a manufacturing bakery, actually, Spartan Foods of America, that make pizza crust. And I became their controller. And that was a great experience because I did everything from closing the books to doing sales reporting for the owner of the company. Right. I interfaced with the salespeople, the manufacturing managers. I did HR, which meant all the personnel stuff, hiring, firing, reviews, benefits shopping. I mean, all of that.
So you went into sort of just everything. You went from public to, controlling and pretty much the finance of an entire private company.
Yes. So then I did that. That was a great experience. I mean, I just had a lot of varied experience. So
Well, then I
you know,
chose the right person for the interview then.
yes, yes, I think so. So, and then I quit working for a number of years because I had children. And then when I went back to work about 6 years ago, I was lucky enough to get connected with a local firm here in Greenville that was willing to bring me back in and throw me back out there and, let me work. And you don't forget, it's like riding a bike. You really don't, if you're an accounting brain, with it's a puzzle, everything's a puzzle with debits and credits and how it fits in and, all that. If your brain works that way, you don't forget it. So I went back in and I actually, my boss put me with one client he had who's a real estate guy here in Greenville who just had a mess. He has at the time he had 10 little partnerships and companies doing different real estate stuff. He had one that was like a brokerage, like a realtor firm, people that just sell houses. So he had all these brokers working for him. And then he has one that is like property management. They, if I'm a rich person and I own a bunch of rental houses, but I don't want to manage them, I can hire this guy's company to manage that. So property management, real estate development, just all these different things. So I started working with him. So I've just become sort of an expert in real estate and all things real estate and construction.
Bonus. It's a good bonus.
Yeah, so that was good. And also one of his bigger companies builds houses. So it's a construction company. So that has put me into cost accounting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So, I've kind of done the gamut from audit all the way through to, cost accounting and taxes, and I've done a little bit of everything.
No, it's very interesting. I'd like to follow a similar path. Obviously, I want to start in public accounting and see, through auditing what sort of connections and, lines of sight I can make in that direction.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to touch up on is you did mention how you're sort of the IT person for the company, even though it's a smaller company. So obviously that's a growing concern among companies, IT, technical experience, everything of that nature. Would you recommend for somebody who's going into accounting to become more fluent in things like coding, software management, things of that nature?
I don't know about coding so much. Obviously any knowledge you can accrue is only good for you, but I don't know. I can't imagine in the world we're in today that coding and being an accountant would be necessarily useful. Although, there's a whole field of fraud auditing out there that's kind of grown in the last probably 10 years. So I'm not really up to speed on what all that involves. But I feel like there's probably opportunity there for fraud accounting and maybe coding and understanding, what's going on inside the computer and how people can, steal and hack and things like that might be useful. But definitely any kind of computer skills you can get. It's so important.
Excel.
Yeah, Excel, and just, I don't know if they teach bookkeeping software now, like QuickBooks, or force you to use anything like that, or Peachtree, or any of the
we might
ones
later on, but for now we're just learning Excel and things like that.
Yeah. But all that's useful to know too. When I started looking again, the other thing about accounting is there's always a job.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Always. When I started looking again, when I decided to go back to work, it was just everything. But some of the fields, some of the jobs that were out there were for more big companies, more cost accounting, big companies. They use different kind of systems. I'm trying to think of the terminology they use, but it's basically systems that track all aspects of the business. It integrates, inventory with cost accounting, with sales, with, all of that. And that's bigger company stuff. I work more for small businesses. I'm more of a QuickBooks kind of.
So you definitely prefer the smaller businesses?
Personally, yeah. Yeah. Because obviously the bigger the company, the more you're just going to be a cog in the wheel.
Yeah, more competitive.
Yeah. So
Hey, would you say that there's more job security? I mean, obviously, bigger companies are less liable to fail on average, but would you say there's more job security in a smaller company than there is a bigger company?
job security, well, possibly, possibly. But the other thing just speaking of whether you would want to go big or small, when you work for a small company, and that could be small, like, 50 to even 100 employees small,
Right.
there are no benefits.
Mm,
If
they
you
can't
need,
afford it.
exactly, exactly. At least not right now. Who knows what's going to happen with health insurance and pensions and all that as the years go by, but that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
Bigger companies
That's
going to have benefits. Yeah.
bigger companies, they have a lower starting salary than some of the smaller firms, but they tend to have a much better package in terms of compensation and stuff, just because they just have volume going for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously you've touched on, sort of training abilities, how you got into your positions, everything of that nature. So when it comes to accounting, let's ask what sort of qualities, like personal qualities or,
Hmm.
brain functions are important to really excelling in the field.
Attention to detail.
That's good for me.
Yeah. It's really all about the detail. If you love the detail, it's fun. It's like it literally is like a puzzle. Like
Mm,
when I popped in with, the guy here in Greenville that's a real estate guy, everything was such a mess because there was um, no real bookkeeper. That's also the problem with a small company. The owners think, well, my person knows how to use QuickBooks. They can write a check and make a deposit. Well, there's a lot more to accounting than just writing a check and making a deposit.
right.
So it was like getting in there and just solving a puzzle, putting together all pieces. This is here. Why isn't that there? Kind of making it all work together. I'm not sure that you have been exposed to, since you're a freshman, just how complex it can get.
Oh yeah, they've already started dipping our feet in the pool of how
Yeah, yeah,
huge it is.
yeah. But if you like the details and the symmetry of it all, just the debit and the credit, even when you do taxes, I think this is partly why I never really was a tax person, is because when you do taxes, it's not so much the debits and the credits. Because like for me, I can always solve a problem with a debit and a credit.
Mm.
Like, well, I need to record this transaction and I know it needs to be an expense, but what is the other side of it? Is it cash? Is it receivables? Is it in contribution from the owner? What is the other side? It's a little debit credit puzzle, but with taxes, it's not so much.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Taxes,
loopholes and everything to consider with it.
exactly. So, but there are people that love taxes. They love, it's very code oriented. So it's very much law. You learn the law, you learn how to read the law, learn the law, use the law. How does it apply to my client? How can my
Right.
client benefit from the law? And there's a lot of money to be made if your brain
Yeah,
works that way.
that would be the allure of it.
Yeah. And and you may find that fun, finding the savings or whatever, or maybe working on the other side of the equation for something like the IRS where you're going after the people,
Yeah,
I don't know.
maybe.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can actually tie that in because you seem really excited about the stuff you're talking about. So I think that already kind of answers the question is like, do you find this job like fulfilling? Do you enjoy going to work? Some days do you like loathe it? Like obviously it might change with the season, tax season, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Near the end of the quarter, you might not like it so much, but do you find generally that you really enjoy it?
Oh yeah. I do. My brain works that way. I think it's fun. I think it's challenging. I really like working for myself, I have to say, because of my personality. I like the ability to control my own time. I tend to work very efficiently. And
Mhm.
so working for myself, if I have these tasks to do and I can get it done, then I have the rest of the day to do other stuff if I want to. So,
so because you work independently, you can dictate your own hours and everything of that nature efficiently.
Yeah.
Did you have that much freedom, say, like if I were to work for, Deloitte or somebody like that, would I have any sort of freedom in dictating my own hours?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Kind of a given.
even well, I mean, when you're starting out, you're always at the beck and call of whoever you're working for, because you don't know enough to say, well, I'm done with this task. Would it be okay if I go do this now? You kind of have to learn that and figure out how you can expand your world and what you're doing. Right. So that's why I found the regional firm was much more flexible, because if I got done, I could just go to my manager or my boss and say, okay, give me something else.
Yeah.
I've got to fill this day. I've got to be here till 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. During not tax season, but like during a normal time, I've got to be here till 5 o'clock. So give me something to do. I'm not going to sit here and fake it and pretend, So.
Yeah. So what were the hours like? I mean, you weren't a tax accountant, so you didn't really have to bear like the huge brunt of it, but what were hours usually like, during tax season and the heavier time of the year?
Well, at that firm, it was a lot of hours. I mean, there were people that I worked with that would work every single day till, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night during tax season. Yeah. But I did not. I would work late, like 5 nights a week, possibly, and then maybe come in on Saturday for part of the day, and then I would take Sunday off, just because, you've got to have a day to do your laundry.
Yeah.
Wash your clothes and go to the grocery store and just kind of rest. But when you're young, you can do that. It's it's not bad when you're young.
Well, yeah, and it builds good experiences.
But I know people that are my age that are still doing that, and I guess they love it. I don't know.
Well, if you enjoy it.
Yeah. I've never said, don't you hate tax season? Because, I can ask that, but.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we can finish that one, because you've already touched on some of the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
So you've sort of touched on some of the broader things. What would you, obviously it might, in accounting, they didn't make the sheet tailored to accounting, but it's different tax season, end of the quarter, things of that nature. But what would you say you have to do on a typical day working as an independent?
Well, it depends on the client I'm working on.
Right.
But typically for me, I handle everything that's in my email that I can first. If there's emails from insurance companies or from my bookkeepers that I work with or from the boss or whoever, that I handle all my emails. And then I work on looking around my mess. I work on basically closing the month, which entails, and that can go on, because I have so many clients, that can actually go on the whole month, depending on the client I'm working on. But and depending on how complex the client is. Like my real estate guy has a lot of companies. There's a lot of transactions that need looking at. So I'll just start reviewing transactions and making sure they're recorded properly. The goal is, for me, is to have everything on the books clean for tax return at the end of the year, so that the tax return doesn't get sent to the tax accountant, because I don't prepare taxes for those clients, but I make sure the books are ready for the tax preparer. Okay. By the end of in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. So, because otherwise what happens is, and this is what happens if you're working for a firm and doing tax prep. You get a small business comes in, they give you their shoebox, whether it's shoebox or a QuickBooks file or whatever. You start going through it and it's just a mess. So you have to figure out what really was that deposit of $200,000. Was it sales, or was it a loan, or was it? So you end up just going through transactions and cleaning things up, and that takes time. And so instead of the file coming in and you just pop it all onto a tax return and hit print, you have to fix everything.
Right.
So my goal as the roving controller is to make sure those books are ready for the tax preparer. So my client is not paying their tax preparer for a bunch of hours spent cleaning up the books.
Right.
So that's kind of my overall goal for the year. Now, in April and October, anyway, at the quarters, I do payroll tax returns. So that's always like on the to-do list in those months. At the end of the year, I assist with printing W-2s for my clients and 1099s, all that kind of federal tax reporting that's just forms and information. It's not like real taxes, but it's a hassle that has to be done, you know?
Yeah.
So what else do I do on a daily basis?
Well, I think something I can infer from a lot of this is that people don't expect from accounting is that it's a lot of interpersonal stuff, you know, saying, hey, what is this $200,000 deposit, you know, haggling them, getting them on time, you know, saying what's going on, all that stuff.
Absolutely. And you have to be comfortable with asking the questions for sure.
Right.
And
I
sometimes
think that's something that people a lot of struggle with is that, you know, especially with the stigma against asking financial questions, saying, hey, what is this? You know?
Yeah.
This looks a little suspicious, you know?
Yeah. Or, you know, you have to present it in a way that doesn't sound like you're questioning it. Right. Hey, I'm just trying to figure out how to record this. You know,
lots of short, quick, easy emails, and then just
just just trying to figure out how to record it, not trying to, you know, throw any shade. Just doing what you hired me to do. So
you find it difficult sometimes not to judge businesses on some of their financial practices, you know, just sort of, wow, you guys are you know, spending money where you shouldn't.
Yeah, well, not so much that, but you may find, this may not surprise you, and it may, but there's a lot of sort of borderline stuff going on with, you know, what you can run through a business and what you can't, as far as expenses with a small business.
Oh,
you know,
right.
I actually had to exit from a sort of, I'm almost done extricating myself from a client who was running so much through the business and deducting it on their tax return that I just couldn't, ethically, it was just like, no.
Do you find yourself in that situation often?
No. That was by far the worst. That was by far the worst. It was just like, can't do this. Can't do this.
So it's the bad apples that they talk about on the news, not your average company.
Yeah. And I haven't, honestly, I haven't had much of that. So, and most clients are like, if you just tell them, well, that's not a valid deduction. I'm going to have to put that in the equity section. So that's kind of what you do with small business. You get those debits and credits instead of running it through like the P&L, which will then be on a tax return. You just move it over and call it a personal distribution or something, so that it's just the owner taking money out of the company instead of trying to write it off on their taxes.
It actually does bring up two supplementary questions that I have. Is first and foremost, is it hard to be like more matter of fact with your clients? You know, say if you did have to say that's not a deductible, you can't get that written off on your taxes. You know, is it hard to? Or is it even allowed as an accountant? Like, is it good for your career if you have to be, you know, very matter of fact with them about certain things?
No, I mean, I think that's your job. I mean, in my mind, well, they're hiring you for your knowledge. So if you're sharing your knowledge with them, which includes, you know, you can't do that. And that's my personal take on it. Now, there may be other people that try to smooth it over and make it work. And, you know, everybody's different. So, but for me personally, it's like, you know, no, we can't do that. So, and most, like I said, most of my clients are okay with that. this point. If they're not, then they're not going to be my clients.
Yeah.
Because part of being a CPA is you have to do continuing professional education. Once you get certified, you have to do 40 hours of CPE a year, and you choose what you do, what kind of classes you take, or what kind of education you want to do. So you might choose, like personally, since I have most of mine's real estate clients, I do a lot of little real estate classes, like how to treat depreciation, or I don't know, I can't think of any other examples, but I do a lot of like real estate stuff. But I also do like, Excel skills. And I mean, there's just a broad variety of things. But one of the things you have to do is you have to take ethics classes. Every 2 years, you have to take ethics classes. And this is the thing that I think they make you do it, even though it's basically the same ethics classes every 2 years. It's the same thing.
The FSAB, those people?
You what?
I think it's the FSAB, the people who can.
You have to do it for the board. You have to do it for the South Carolina board, and every state has it. But I think they're just trying to pound into you and remind you what your responsibility, what your ethical responsibility is as a CPA. You're not there to cheat for your client or anything like that. You're there to do the best you can for your client within the framework of being an honest, person and doing the right thing. And that includes not, just turning your head to transact. Yeah, exactly. Tax fraud. Yeah. So, but that's part of it. And that can get a little hard, but I mean, that's by far in all my years, that's the only situation I've ever been in that was like super uncomfortable for me.
Do you find it difficult to separate from, say unethical clients or clients you don't feel as confident in?
Well, I mean, this particular person, it was only hard because they didn't necessarily have anybody else to do what I was doing, because I was kind of in charge of getting the payroll out and everything. I was doing full-blown bookkeeping and everything for them. So I had to find a replacement. I didn't feel like it appropriate for me to just go done and walk away.
Right.
I felt like I needed to find somebody who could manage the bookkeeping and all that without it being an ethical problem for them. Just a bookkeeper.
Right.
Somebody who went to tech and just going to do the books.
Yeah.
So.
You find it, not necessarily annoying, but, just a nuisance having to keep up with all the current education stuff, or, new standards adapting to them and everything like that?
Nah, I don't, because I like to learn. So, and I don't have to do, because I'm not an auditor anymore, I don't have to keep up with a lot of the audit standards because I'm not an auditor, and my clients are small enough that they don't have to be audited.
Right.
So, because not everybody gets audited. In fact, most small businesses don't have any sort of, there's audit, there's review, and there's compilation.
Yeah.
Standards for, if you're in that auditing sector. So, and there's different reports that go with them. I don't have any clients who have to have any of that. I'm basically just in there trying to keep things reasonable, clean, and ready for a tax return. And then whatever other assistance I can give, like reporting to the owners on a regular basis. Here's how you're doing. Here's what you're making. Here's what you're looking at. Here's what you might want to think about for tax planning purposes.
Right.
That sort of thing. But so I haven't had to keep up with the audit standards, which are probably the more dry, kind of boring stuff, to be honest.
Keeping up with it.
Yeah.
I read some of them when I was doing an article review for it. It was just general accounting practices. I think that was the FSAB, it was like their website. Yeah. It's just super long document, super bureaucratic. You're like, okay. It sounds like last year's accounting practices, because I looked at those too, but there's only one thing that changed, and I just read this whole thing.
Yeah. So I mean, if I was starting out, I mean, I think the track I took was a good one for me, because I learned a lot and I kind of figured out which way to go. I think that's probably what most people do. You start out with the big audit firms for the big
Right.
bucks, see if it works for you, and see if you like the atmosphere and I just didn't fit in. So that was just not me. So, but that's okay. I learned something and I got where I wanted to be. So
well, you seem like you still really enjoy it, and that makes me hopeful,
I do. And there's a lot of people, at least back when I was younger, there was a lot of people that did accounting that probably shouldn't have been. Like they didn't really understand.
I've met a few of them.
Yeah. Like if you don't really get the basics of the debits and the credits, then you're probably in the wrong business.
So going in sort of a different direction here, we've talked about, the career paths, and, you've obviously mentioned how you used to have to supervise people when you were working in the different sized firms.
Yes.
So let's say, what are some of like the pros and the cons of the field? It doesn't necessarily just have to be like financial rewards or anything like that. We can come back to that, but obviously you enjoy it, but like, what are just some of the pros and the cons of working, as a CPA today?
That's a good question. I just really
subjective. It doesn't have to just be.
I'm just thinking how to answer it because I really like what I do, and so for me the pros are just if you find you enjoying the work, then how can that? Work is too much a part of your life to not just enjoy it. So if you just like it, like you asked me earlier, did I ever dread going to work? No, only if it's raining and cold and I don't want to go outside. Other than that, I like to work. But there's never a day that I just dread because I like accounting. But cons are just, the only way I can think of a con is just figuring out your path. That's going to take some time because even when I left this part out, but even when I graduated from Carolina in a finance degree, I couldn't figure out what to do with a finance degree.
Well, yeah, it's much broader than accounting.
And the fact of the matter is, I went into Carolina thinking I was going to get an accounting degree, and I dropped out of accounting when I hit intermediate accounting. So don't drop out when you hit intermediate accounting. It's hard. It's like or it used to be, I guess it probably still is, but it's like my niece dropped out of accounting when she hit intermediate accounting. Anyway, I warned her. I was like, don't drop out, just push through because it's a hard, back then it was 2 classes, intermediate 1 and intermediate 2, and it was hard. But I dropped out, I got a finance degree, got out of college, didn't know what to do. And you know what I ended up doing? Bookkeeping. Bookkeeping. I went to work for a big textile company in Spartanburg, and I did accounts payable, and I did inventory accounting, and I did all this. I was way down at the bottom, but I learned so much. And I learned then that I needed to go back to school and be a CPA. That's when I said, you know what? This is crazy. I'm never going to get anywhere doing accounts payable. But the cons are just the hard, just staying true to yourself and figuring it out. Because there's so many ways you can go. You can go, you can stay with a big firm. You can go to a regional firm and stay in audit and do that stuff, or work with local clients and small businesses and do taxes. You could go to a law school and be a tax accountant or a tax attorney, I should say. You can work as a controller for small businesses. You can work as a controller for big companies. There is a lot. There's a lot. Yeah. You can do fraud accounting, which I think it would be fascinating, but it wasn't really a field.
I think it's like forensic or something.
Yes. Yes. I think that's fascinating because to me, that just sounds like digging in and solving the puzzle. Where'd the money go, or how'd they get it, or how'd they cheat the system? To me, that sounds fascinating. That one,
like a detective, with the master's in accounting.
Exactly, but that was not a field that was really a thing when I was coming up. So
yeah, it was a bit more obvious back then. No, that check isn't real.
Exactly. Well, the computers were not what they are now. That was really early days of personal computers and software and all that. So definitely was not a thing back then. So
another thing I want to touch up on, you don't have to give specifics, of course, but do you feel that sort of the financial rewards of being an accountant, like obviously starting off, it's definitely a different story, but just in general, would you feel satisfied with, the salaries or benefits that you get from being an accountant?
yeah, and again, I think there's so many different ways you can go.
That's why it's a difficult question to ask.
Yeah, that if it's more about the money, you can definitely go down that path and in search of the money, the really big bucks. But I mean, I'm happy with my pay. I've managed to, bring myself up. I just bill by the hour, and I've managed to bring my billing rate up because I work for myself. I just bill when I'm ready to raise my rates. I raise my rates, and if they don't want to pay me that, then we'll have a conversation. But I've never run into a roadblock on that. But I mean, there's money to be made. I think it's what you want to do. If it's all about the money, then you need to shoot for the moon. As far as being a tax expert is probably going to be the most money. If that's, I'm just guessing, but
because you can just take on so many different clients and charge for H&R block rates.
Yeah, well, and it's just people will pay for that. I mean, I hear it every day from the guy I work for most. And it's taken me years for him to understand that I'm not a tax accountant. I bring a lot to his organization, but I'm not a tax accountant. So when he starts throwing tax stuff, I'm like, you're going to have to talk to Jerry. Jerry's his tax guy. So, if it's about the money and you really want to be highly valued for what you do, taxes. Because that guy working his butt off as an entrepreneur does not want to pay taxes. That's what it comes down to. He does not want to pay taxes.
Yeah. So you'd have to be pretty fluent in the bureaucracy of it to be a successful tax accountant, don't you think?
Yeah. But I mean, if it appeals to you, then you start down that path young.
Right. So. It's kind of hard to switch into it.
I think so. I do think so.
Mm-hmm.
But
so, you've already touched up on, pretty much all the major things, your organization, yourself, job security, I think we've already mentioned, some of the tougher challenges you face, some of the ethical dilemmas or things of that nature. Mm-hmm. How would you evaluate the future of accounting, with automation of certain things or, obviously there's a shortage of accountants right now, but, how do you see the future of the field going?
Oh, it's never going away. I mean, there's always been a shortage of accountants, I believe. Mm-hmm. Every time in my life that I've ever looked at just the quickest way to know, looking at the want ads, there's always 100 jobs for accountants. I'm not exaggerating.
I've seen them.
I mean, it's a lot of jobs, and I don't think it's going away. I mean, I think even with automation, that just means that you need to understand how to use the software.
Right.
But the software is not going to replace the person.
Well, it just accentuates your skills you already have too.
Yeah. It just makes it easier to get things done. Right. The automation. So, but it also makes it, I don't know, like I said, there's definitely an underappreciation out there for a good bookkeeper, which is, a different level than a CPA, but still,
right.
People don't want to pay for a bookkeeper, but a bookkeeper is worth their weight in gold. A good bookkeeper is just, somebody who not necessarily, understanding the whole big picture of what, financial statement is or a tax return is, but they understand that what they're doing is important for the organization.
Oh, for sure. I think it's super easy for accountants to do that because you hear a lot about, low job satisfaction in offices, because people are talking about, I don't see what value I actually provide. But, if you look at accounting, you're literally looking at, like I said, if you worked as a bookkeeper, you are tracing everything that a company has done financially. And that's extremely important, for
And
taxes, auditing, all that.
that's right. And a lot of small businesses, the owners don't appreciate it until they don't have it.
Yeah.
Like they don't even know what they have until that person says, I'm done, I'm tired of the culture here, whatever the reason might be, and they leave. And then the owner is like, oh,
Yeah.
that was important. Have a good bookkeeper. So,
So do you feel pretty much like, not necessarily CPAs because they're such, extremely influential, valuable, assets, but just like starting accountants, like second I graduate college, if I have, my master's, I have my CPA, but I'm still bottom of the food chain. So you'd say the value is pretty low. It's very experience based.
I don't know about for CPAs, but definitely if you're doing a bookkeeping type position, if you went that route, like if instead of going into the big, whatever they have, the big, big international firms or whatever, instead of doing that, you just went out there and got a job. Yeah, it'd be harder for sure. So.
Well, those are the salaries people tend to look at too. We'll have business class and then they'll have the slides accounting. I'm like, well, which kind? It's like saying, oh yeah, an oxygen breather. Well, is it a dog? Is it?
Yeah. Right. It's some kind of average, I guess.
Yeah. And the average is demoralizing. I had a moment, where I was like super confident about accounting. I'm like, I think I want to do this, looked at the salaries. I was like,
What are starting salaries now?
Well, I think if you're at like Deloitte and, you have your CPA, they don't clarify that obviously in the salary, but it's like 56 or something. And it hasn't changed since like the 90s. And you're like, wow, okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, that's supply and demand. You think the demand is here, the supply is here, you'd be higher, but not necessarily. Yeah. So but that's some of the why people move away from them.
Yeah. But that's not a bad rate of pay for the South, depending on where you live. And also just to get the experience and the exposure to what it means to be in that type of organization. And if you thrive where you're planted, you will not be sitting at that low rate of pay for very long.
No, and I think that's sort of what people understand.
And it probably jumps up once you pass the exam.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because Clemson in the master's program, they'll take the exams with you. You get that pretty much done by the time you graduate.
No way. You're kidding.
That's the allure of it now. They were like, you can finish your undergrad in 3 and then get your master's in 1. And by that point, you'll be a CPA. And I was like, that because of the way it's structured. I'm already a Clemson student and I have that connection there. But they mentioned it's harder for people who come like from USC to Clemson simply because of the infrastructure and the way it's built.
Well, they didn't do it that way back when I was taking it. You had to go down, it was offered twice a year. You had to go down to Columbia and sit in a big room with hundreds of other people.
Well, you still have to do it like that, but they'll prepare you through your master's program and you'll take it as you go. They don't take it with you. I don't mean like that, but
Yeah.
No,
I didn't know if it was all computer based now.
I'll have to see about that, but it's definitely more computer based than it was.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Because your job is more computer based than it was. Yeah. So I would expect that much.
Yeah. Well, that's good. But yeah, I mean, trying to decide, I just see what's out there. But I mean, the path definitely worked for me because I was able to say, no, not doing that. So, but I don't know. There's a lot of options, like I said.
Mm-hmm. But you just gotta keep an open mind about it too.
Yeah, you won't take a tax. You won't take a tax class till you're probably a junior.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll have to take it because if I finish my undergrad as a junior, then yeah, I'll have to.
You might take it. You might even take it next year.
Yeah, I think so because my current standing is a sophomore in credits, but we'll see if they allow me to. I can get all the permissions and everything to do so.
Yeah. Well, you should definitely see how you like tax class.
Yeah, we'll see. That's the one you want to keep your ear to the most.
Yeah, because if you do, that's where probably the big long-term job satisfaction is, just because it's such a value. If your brain works that way, I think it's probably high value and big bucks, and like I said, very much appreciated by clients and that sort of thing.
But with a job like this, I think that's where some of the skepticism myself has come from, is because you're realizing that it's, a lot of students will just find something that they can make good money in and then they'll just stick with it. But, if you have a job like accounting, you have to like it, as well. Otherwise your quality of life is not going to be too great, between the hours and, the paperwork and client interaction, you have to enjoy it. And so that's what I look forward to, is just seeing if I enjoy it, through internships or classes.
So are you going to do some internships?
Hopefully. I won't be qualified to do many accounting internships until maybe hopefully the end of my sophomore year or my junior year before master's, because I won't have the knowledge to actually do any accounting. But yeah, I hope to. I'll see how that goes.
I mean, if you think you want to try to find something next summer, just to get your, toes in the water, I might be able to see if my buddies over at Sod and Manos here in Greenville have a position for an intern during the summer. It could be anything from bookkeeping to filing, but if I just wanted to see what it was like for a few weeks, I could probably put in a good word.
I would definitely appreciate that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I think internships are great. Like I said, my niece was lucky enough to have an internship. She was in Jacksonville, and she worked in a sort of a bigger company, like some kind of medical company, and they let her do every aspect of accounting. I mean, she had a great experience and she loved it. She got to do payables and payroll and receivables. She got to kind of put her fingers in all the aspects of bookkeeping, which I think is important to understand, because if you're going to be a controller or a tax accountant, you need to understand what all these transactions are, where they come from, how they work, how they get in the system, and all of that. So I think, she had a great experience, and then I don't know what happened. She switched to psychology.
Wow, that's a jump.
Yeah, like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, I haven't said that, but but I think the sooner you can get a little bookkeeping experience, probably the better, just to see.
That's what I was considering. They're not going to throw you in, hey, can you do some consultation? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right, well, I appreciate you taking the time on this lovely Saturday morning to do this.
Yeah, it's too cold to be outside.
It's too cold in here. I think they shut off the heat when they left. But yeah, I do appreciate you answering all my questions. I know I have a lot of them, but I feel like I got a lot of good information.
I hope so. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Oh, no. I love it. And I think I'm going to enjoy it.
Okay, good. Well, feel free to call or text or anything anytime. And if you have any other questions or anything I can do for you,
Thank you. I'll end the recording.